Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we are continuing lesson number 8 and we are starting in part number 2 regarding the letter Ra. But before we start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa Salah ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Let us see what we have here. The articulation of the letter Ra. We talked about it in part 1, but let us see the diagrams to imagine how the Ra is actually pronounced and what is affecting the pronunciation of the letter Ra. Now, the Ra is pronounced by using the tip of the tongue against the parallel tooth gum close to the letter Noon. Okay, so here is the tip of the tongue here, and I strike it not here because here is the lam, and then comes the Noon here exactly below the gum, and then comes the Ra. Very, very slight differences, okay, but subhanallah, this is how it is with different letters, different sounds, different articulation points. Okay, so the air comes from here and the sound, the vocal cords vibrates, the tip of the tongue strikes just below the makhraj of the letter Noon, and the Ra is pronounced. But there is something quite special about the Ra, the Makhraj. Can you see this? These are the lips, okay? And this is the tongue. This is the down part of the tongue that we can see. So I strike the tongue, the tip of the tongue, just behind the gum, a little bit behind the gum of those upper two teeth, okay? But what do I leave here? I leave a small opening. So this means that the tip of the tongue does not collide against the parallel tooth gum, but it is, it leaves this small opening for the letter Ra to be pronounced. So when I say ar, I will notice that the tongue touches here and here, left and right, but in the middle, just in the middle, there is a very small opening. Now what happens here? You see the sound is running, and the sound is running here, okay, from inside, from the vocal cords. It runs upwards. So we can see the diagram on the left. Here are the sound movement shown by the arrows. And then what happens? This small opening, which I was just telling you, it's opened, okay? But it's really small, very delicate opening. So what happens to the sound that's running from deep inside? It starts gathering. It starts gathering together so that it is able to go out through this small opening. And this is called deviation of the letter Ra. I think you can remember the deviation, this character. We mentioned it before when we were talking about the letter Lam. But the deviation in the letter Lam was opposite this one. This one they deviated into the middle, together into the middle. Okay, what deviated this sound? Because the sound is running this in the direction of the arrows, and then it moved its direction so that it can go out from this small opening, and this is the deviation of the Ra. But in the case of the Lam, this whole part was closed, and the sound was also running like this. So what happened? This is also closed. There's no opening here regarding the Lam. So what happened is that the sound deviated outwards. In the case of the ra, the sound deviates inwards, but in the case of the lam, the sound deviates outwards. Okay? Now, it's very important regarding the pronunciation of the ra to notice this small opening. Okay? We will discuss it a little bit more when we are discussing the mistakes that's happening, okay, in the pronunciation of the letter ra. But I hope that you are aware of this idea. The character of deviation is only with the ra and the lam. Why? Because the sound deviates from, I mean, you see, this is the deviation, this arrow and that arrow, and then coming inside also, this is the deviation. And in the letter ra, it's the opposite. Okay, let's have a look here. How does the repetition occur? Now, in the letter ra, there is something, one of the characteristics in the letter ra, just the letter ra, not in any other letter, but just the letter ra, which is called repetition. What happens? How does the repetition occur? And it's the trembling of the tongue head. Now listen to me when I am pronouncing any ra. For example, this one, I have this example. We're going to use those two words a lot today, okay? And in part 3, where we are going to speak about the mistakes which occurs with the letter ra. Now, for example, here I should say ar-ra, ar-ra, but if I close this opening, it's going to sound like this: ar, ar-rahman, ar-rahim. This is a common mistake, by the way. Okay, so tightening this small opening, if I made it a very, very smaller opening, this will cause repetition of the letter. So what is required? It's required to leave a small opening for the sound to pass through, because the letter ra has this ability of repetition. It's the only letter that has this ability. So it's one of its characters, but it's not recommended to be repeated many times. If I say ar-Rahman, or I say ar-Rahman, here I repeated it just a bit more. It's okay. Maybe you didn't notice it either. But if I say ar-Rahman, ar-Rahmanir-Rahim, this happened because I pressed more on this opening, almost canceling it. Okay? Very good. Let's have an exercise, and let's see how we can adjust the sound of the letter ra. Actually, the letter ra needs good attention from our side to be able to correct the pronunciation problems. Yes. First, we need to understand the delicate mechanism in pronouncing the letter ra, which I already explained. Okay? Now, adjusting the letter ra. Let us say al, al, al. It's running. The sound is running. Let us say with repetition the ra. Ar, ar. Let's say without repetition. Let us say ar, ar, ar-Rahman, al-ardi. Okay, just one. Now I want you to feel the difference here. We are trying to adjust the letter ra, the pronunciation of the letter ra. Let us pronounce those 3 words. They are sukoon with a hamza fatha before them. Let us say al. We took this, okay? Now al, an, ar. Okay, so the lam is just at the behind the upper, and then the noon comes after it, and then the ra comes after it. So let us say them again. Al, and the lam has bayniya, and the ra, they both have tawassut. And what about the noon? Does it have tawassut? Of course. Lin Omar. So this has this tawassut, this tawactor. So let's do it. Al, I'm gonna pronounce each one twice. Al, an, ar. Okay? I want you to feel it. The sequence, the lam first, the noon, and then the ra. The noon, and then the ra. Now there was a scholar called Al-Farra, and he said, whoever can raise the tongue tip and pronounce the above letters, the noon and the lam, will be able to pronounce the ra, because they emit from the same place. Okay? According to Al-Farra. Al-Farra says that those three letters, he gave them one articulation area. Okay? So he says whoever is going to be able to pronounce the lam is going to be able to pronounce the noon. He is going to be able to pronounce the ra, because they emit from the same place. Okay, now here we need to talk a little bit about the ra characteristics, and we are going to try to experiment the letters on the angles that we already took before. First one, is it shadida, bayniya, or rikhwa? Does the sound cuts? If the sound cuts, this means if I say ab, this means that I made it shadida, and this is wrong. Why? Because the ra has an opening, so the sound can run. But does the sound of the ra runs like the soft letters, like al-huruf al-rikhwa, like the sin, for example, as ar? No. But does it terminate like al-huruf al-shadida? Not even so. So it is bayniya, it's in between. Okay, it belongs to the letters lin Omar. Okay. Now also, is it musta'liya or mustafila? Yes, this is important. Why? Because the ra can sometimes be pronounced musta'liya, elevated, and sometimes it can be pronounced mustafila, lowered. Okay, and let us give it a try. If I pronounce the ra fatha or ra dhamma in its simple form, then I will say ra, okay, ar. But if it has a kasra, then I will say ri, rijal, ri. Okay, so when it is elevated, when it's musta'liya, we can recognize the middle part of the tongue goes down, the furthermost part of the tongue rises up, and the throat is narrowed. Okay, so when we say ra, ru, you can feel this. Okay, and what about, does it have air coming out with it? Is it whispered or is it majhura? Now the letters that are whispered, we know them, فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ. But if we don't remember these, we need to experiment. So let us say the letter ra and see if there's any air flowing out with it. So we say ar, I don't feel any air flowing. So the letter ra is apparent, harf majhur. Is there any hunna flowing with the ra? No, it's just the noon, not the lam, just the noon, but the ra doesn't have any hunna. And this I thought was something that we really need to talk about or to mention, because there are so many students that are learning Quran, and they have their influence, their mother tongue has its own influence upon their pronunciation of the letters. But let's see what Ibn Khaldun says. He says that hearing is the base for tongue abilities. Whatever I hear, this is what I pronounce. And in Arabic, السمع أصل الملكات اللسانية. Okay, this is the translation of it. So, for example, this mother is reading for her kids. So no baby nor child had to study articulations to pronounce the letters. Of course, just heard the sounds and imitated them from the parents, from the society. So the kids inherit what they hear from their parents. But what we inherited can always be corrected. This is the main point. So any one of you that would say, I'm not able to pronounce properly, I will not be able to pronounce properly, my mother tongue language is affecting my pronunciation, of course. But the first quote is not correct. It is affecting, but you will be able, with practice, you are, and the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, with practice and asking the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be able to pronounce and very well also, inshallah. Okay, now thank you very much for your attendance, and inshallah we will meet in part number 3, where we are going to talk about the articulations and of the letter Ra and the mistakes that we do when we pronounce the letter Ra, and how do we correct it. Okay, thank you very much, and see you in the coming recording, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.